History has introduced us to thousands of extraordinary people. Some changed science, some changed politics, some changed the way we think. But today, we're only interested in one: Nelson Mandela, a man who spent 27 years behind bars. Yet when he finally walked free, he didn't choose revenge. He chose forgiveness. How is that possible? What kind of person gives up almost 3 decades of freedom and still changes the world? Let's go back to where it all began. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in the small village of Mvezo, South Africa. He wasn't born into wealth. He wasn't born famous. As a young boy, he enjoyed playing with friends, listening to stories from village elders, and learning about his culture. At the time, he had no idea that one day, millions of people around the world would know his name. As Nelson Mandela grew older, he quickly realized that life wasn't fair. In South Africa, people were treated differently because of the color of their skin. Black South Africans faced unfair laws that affected where they could live, work, and go to school. Even as a young man, Mandela believed something had to change. But changing a country would never be easy. He worked hard in school. He loved learning, and he believed that education could open doors that fear could never unlock. Years later, he studied law. His goal wasn't just to build a successful career. It was to help people who didn't have a voice. Little by little, Nelson Mandela became known as someone who stood up against injustice, but speaking out came with a price. And soon, his life would change forever. The government saw Mandela as a threat, not because he carried great wealth, but because his ideas inspired people. Those ideas would eventually lead to one of the most famous trials in modern history, and after that, nearly 3 decades behind prison walls. As the years passed, Nelson Mandela became one of the most recognized voices calling for equal rights in South Africa. His message spread across the country. More and more people began listening, but not everyone welcomed what he had to say. Government officials believed his activities threatened the country's system of racial segregation. In 1962, Mandela was arrested. He was later put on trial with several others in what became known as the Rivonia trial. During the trial, he gave a speech that would be remembered around the world. He spoke about equality, justice, and the dream of a country where people of all races could live together with equal rights. In the end, he was sentenced to life in prison. For many people, that would have been the end of the story. But for Nelson Mandela, it was only the beginning. Prison was not easy. Day after day, year after year, Mandela lived behind prison walls. Much of his sentence was spent on Robben Island. His daily routine was strict. He worked hard. He had limited contact with family and friends. Life moved slowly, yet something remarkable happened. Instead of letting prison fill him with hatred, Mandela continued to learn. He read books, he studied, he encouraged others to educate themselves too. Many prisoners began calling Robben Island the University of Robben Island, because they learned from one another. Even after years of hardship, Mandela refused to give up hope. Around the world, people began calling for his release. His name became a symbol of courage. Millions had never met him, yet they believed in what he stood for. Then, after 27 long years, the moment finally arrived. On February 11, 1990, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison. Television cameras from around the world captured every step. Millions of people watched. Many expected him to be angry. Many expected revenge. After all, he had lost nearly 3 decades of his freedom. But Mandela surprised the world. Instead of calling for violence, he called for peace. Instead of dividing people, he encouraged them to build a better future together. It wasn't an easy path. South Africa still faced enormous challenges. But Mandela believed lasting change required reconciliation, not endless conflict. Just 4 years later, in 1994, South Africa held its first fully democratic national election. Nelson Mandela became the country's first black president, elected through that democratic process. It was a historic moment, not just for South Africa, but for the entire world. As president, Mandela worked to unite a nation that had been divided for generations. He encouraged dialogue, cooperation, and the difficult work of rebuilding trust. Although no leader can solve every problem, his leadership became an example of reconciliation and hope for many people around the world. So why is Nelson Mandela still respected today? It wasn't because he was perfect. It wasn't because life was easy. It was because he chose principles over hatred, hope over despair, forgiveness over revenge. His story reminds us that leadership is not only about power, it's about character. It's about standing up for what you believe even when the cost is incredibly high. His life continues to inspire students, teachers, leaders, and ordinary people across the world. Nelson Mandela's journey proves that one person's choices can leave a lasting mark on history. His legacy continues to be studied and remembered around the world. If you enjoyed learning about his story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Every World, and tell us in the comments, who should we explore next? Every week, we'll uncover the life of another remarkable person who changed history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary.